What's up, E.D.G family? Kevin here, and welcome to Eat Drink Game, the channel where we talk board games, talk new drinks to try, and hopefully just around the corner, some new recipes to take to game night. Today, I'm going to be talking about good old-fashioned deck building. I'm going to be talking about deck builders that are in my collection, deck builders that I maybe would like to add to my collection, and I'm also going to be talking about how deck building, to me, is a little bit like mixology, making that perfect cocktail. So I'm going to show you guys on how to make a Grand Marnier Old Fashioned. It is a simple recipe and has quickly became one of my go-to recipes. So if you're interested in deck building and you're interested in maybe making that perfect old fashioned, this might be the video for you. Alright, so deck building to me is probably one of my favorite board game mechanisms. I like deck building games. I like cooperative deck building games. I like heavier deck building games, and I'm going to talk about 4 specifically that are in my collection. The first one I want to talk about is the first deck builder I ever played, and that is Clank in Space by Renegade Game Studios and Direwolf Digital. This is a game that is like the reiteration of the original game, Clank, which is a fantasy game. This one is obviously science fiction themed, and then more recently they have a legacy version of this game, and currently I believe they're crowdfunding the second legacy version of this game. I wouldn't start with this one. If we're being completely honest, this would not be my go-to in my collection to teach somebody. What you're going to do in this game is you're going to build a deck, and most deck builders, you're going to start with 10 cards. This one's no different. The biggest difference between this deck builder and the rest of them is you are actually going to have a character on a board. You are going to be moving that character on the board, because in this game you are playing a space thief and you are trying to steal an expensive artifact from an evil overlord, because well, he deserves it. But you're going to be going through this massive spaceship, and there is some asymmetry on the board setup for this game. You're going to be moving through, you're going to be playing cards to move, you're going to be playing cards to fight, and you're also going to be playing cards that are going to give you some clank. And clank is generally something you don't want. It's noise you're going to make going through the ship that could eventually cause you damage. You're also going to be using these cards to buy variable market cards, and you're going to upgrade your deck that way. You're going to buy cards that are going to give you unique abilities to those cards. Maybe some of them are going to give you a lot more movement. Maybe some of them are going to let you fight more. Some of them may allow you to draw more cards, and others are going to allow you to maybe trash cards and get them out of your deck, like your Clank cards. And that is basically what most deck building games do. This one just does it a little differently because you are on a board and you are actually playing cards to move that character. This is a game I definitely would recommend to somebody that is going to play this in a gaming group with probably at least 2 to 3 people quite often. But it does have a fantastic solo app by Direwolf Digital. I've went through it a few times. It is an enjoyable experience. But other than that, I would say, pick the Clank game that works for you. This one works for me because I like science fiction games. Maybe you don't, but I do. So the next one I want to talk about is the next deck building game I played. And this one is a cooperative deck building game, and this is one of the biggest ones in my collection. This is Aeon's and by Indie Board and Cards. It is a cooperative deck building game where you're going to be fighting a boss. You're going to be fighting a nemesis, and there's, I think, 4 in each base game, and you're going to be playing a breach mage that's going to be casting spells and buying new cards. And it's just like any other deck builder where you're going to start with 10 cards. You're going to be able to buy new cards. The biggest difference with this one is you're going to have a set market. You're going to know what cards that you have access to buy and upgrade your cards. You also are going to have to spend currency on equipping more spells. You're going to need to open these breaches up. You're going to have to rotate them, and you're going to have to prep spells, because when you play a spell, it doesn't actually trigger until your next turn. So there's going to be a fine balance of that. But like I said, it is a cooperative deck builder, and it's relatively easy to learn. I would definitely recommend Aeon's End for anybody getting into deck building. It's a great cooperative game. I recently just got Astronauts in, and I didn't really want to talk about that one today because I only have a few plays on that one. Where this one I have a ton of plays. This game is actually in my top 10 games right now. It is fantastic. There is so much content for Aeon's in, and to be honest, that is probably the biggest issue I have with it. I don't even have that much stuff with it, but I feel like the more additions you make to this game, the more decisions you have to make when you get it to the table. So keep that in mind when you're trying to get more content for some of these deck builders. Yeah, it's gonna get played because you have new content to play, but also after you've played that content, you're gonna have to make choices every single time that you go to set this game up. And sometimes it might take a little bit longer to get it to the table. But that's Aeon's in. And out of these right now, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the highest rated game in my collection. I love it. It's fantastic. Highly recommend. One of my newer ones, and also in my top 10, is the most complicated deck builder I have. And that is Dune Imperium. The IP aside, because I honestly really, really like Dune. I'm a huge fan of the new movie. I've read the book. I liked the miniseries back in the day, and I could literally just talk about Dune for an entire video. But I'm not going to do that today. We're going to talk about how fantastic Dune Imperium is. I will tell you, this is not just a deck builder. It is also a worker placement game. There are a few of those out on the market. Lost Ruins of Arnak is another one, and I'm sure there's a few more that I don't know of. So you're going to be playing cards from your hand, but you're also going to be using those to place workers out on a board, take actions, gain resources, and there's a little bit of area control as far as combat goes. But yeah, it is definitely probably the most different deck builder out of all these. Clank, yeah, I told you you're on the board and you're moving your character, but this being a worker placement game as well, it just has a completely different feel to it. It's hard to say that it's a true deck builder, but I will say it really is, because the new content is literally just adding more mechanics to the deck building side of this game. It is, I definitely don't think I would recommend this for necessarily somebody new to deck building, but if they played a few board games, this or a worker placement game, it shouldn't be too hard to teach, but it's fantastic. I have a playthrough on this. I have a unboxing of this deluxe upgraded box, and hopefully at some point I'll get some immortality to the channel and we'll see some of the new Dune Imperium content as well. The last one I want to talk about is my newest addition as far as content goes. This is a brand new Moonrakers Titan Edition box. It's huge, and to be honest, I haven't really gotten into this thing yet. I have played a lot of the base game Moonrakers, predominantly solo, but I've also played quite a bit of the Luminor app that they released when they crowdfunded this. As far as deck builders go, other than the negotiation aspect, this is the simplest in my collection. The iconography is clear, easy to read. You are going to be adding ship parts that basically are just going to add more cards and give you some asymmetrical abilities that are generally pretty easy to understand. And then instead of having a variable card market like you do in Dune Imperium or Clank, you're going to have crew members that you're going to be able to get. Now, they will be variable. You don't know which one's going to come out, but they generally do a lot of the same things that your cards already do. They're going to give you more actions. They're going to allow you to play more cards. They're going to allow you to play shields that are going to stop you from taking damage. Because in this game, you are trying to negotiate with other players to go onto contracts with you in order to get victory points. You're basically just trying to get the most victory points, trying to get there before everybody else, but you're going to need help to get there. And so this being a negotiating game as well, it feels semi-cooperative at some points. And if you want to play cooperatively with them, you can. You can play on the Luminor app fully cooperative, which kind of gives it another ease into playing this with a new player, especially if they never played a deck builder. When you're trying to negotiate, you can say, hey, what do you have on your hand? Can we make this mission work? Are we going to be able to play the right cards we need to complete it? Very easily. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you could sit down in front of a computer and you can play an app-based version of this game. Completely different. I mean, as far as what you're doing, it's different. But it's just very easy to teach, and I would definitely recommend that to anybody trying to get in there. And like I said, this is actually the first deck builder I backed on Kickstarter before I got Clank, before I got Aeons. I just didn't get it for about a year after I backed it. But fantastic game. This is one of those games I definitely don't feel like I've played quite enough. I want to get this to the table with some more people, some more gaming groups, especially since I have the new expansions. And yeah. I want to check that out. So hopefully this kind of gave you an idea what deck builders I like and what deck building generally is. If I had to recommend some deck builders that I don't have, that maybe you saw these and you're like, oh, it's not really my thing. I am interested in picking up at some point maybe some Marvel Champions. I mean, completely honest, a little burnout on the Marvel IP, just a tad bit. But I've heard Marvel Champions is a fantastic deck builder, has a lot of content. And then I also would probably get into some of the legendaries, like Legendary 007. I'm a huge James Bond fan. Aliens has one. That would probably be my second go-to. I just feel like I've got enough. I got Nemesis. I got the Evo Morph from Final Girl. I'm trying to think. I feel like I got something else more recently too that feels, alien-esque. And then the other one I would definitely probably think about picking up is maybe some of the Renegade ones. Renegade has a Power Rangers deck building game. That would probably be my first pick because I do have quite a bit of the Heroes of the Grid stuff. They have a Transformers, a G.I. Joe, and I got an 8-year-old girl, so if I ever needed to pick up, even the My Little Pony deck builder just to kind of get her going at some point, it might not be a bad option. But that, as far as deck builders go, that would be my experience with deck builders. So now I'm going to talk about my experience with cocktails. Alright, so now let's talk about cocktails and mixology. And what does that really have to do with deck building? Well, in most deck builders, you're going to start out with some very basic cards. You're going to have some basic ingredients. So we're trying to make an old fashioned. What basic ingredients could we possibly need for that? Well, I'll tell you right now, we got some basic bourbon. We could totally use this. That's fine. But, maybe let's upgrade it with, a little bit higher of a rye. Other things we need for an old fashioned, maybe some simple syrup, maybe just some regular sugar. And that's great. We could use that. We could upgrade it. We could go completely different path depending on your flavor preference, your deck preference. We could grab some ancho liqueur. This is going to give it a little bit of heat, a little bit of spice, kind of similar to what bitters would do. But it's also going to give you basically that sweetness that you would have got from the sugar. What else can we do? Well, say you don't like that and you want something maybe sweet, no heat, something a little different. This is going to give you a little bit of honey, a little bit of a honey syrupy flavor. Still sweet, still something to add to a basic old fashioned, but that's another option. And so we got the alcohol, we got the sweetness, and then the other thing we want to talk about is the bitters. I mean, this is something else. This is something you are going to add to a lot of whiskey cocktails, and these are just some very, very basic, aromatic bitters. If you don't necessarily, you want to try something different, or you can't find those, you could get some orange bitters. Orange bitters are fantastic. I'm not going to use that for this specific recipe because, well, this Grand Marnier has a little bit of orange liqueur in with that cognac, and it is great. So we will not need any orange bitters. It'll be more than we need. So we're definitely gonna go higher on that. But even saying that, these are smoked chili bitters. They're fantastic. When building a cocktail, you should always lean into your preferences. Regardless of what that recipe says, you're building a cocktail for you. Or maybe you're building it for somebody else, and you need to be mindful of maybe what their preferences are. Same when you're building a deck. You don't want too many money cards in. You don't want too many attack cards in. There's a fine balance, and there's no difference here. But maybe your role is a little different. Maybe you don't want as much alcohol in it. You can tone that down a little bit. You can bring the sweetness up. But for this guy, very simple old fashioned. We are going to be making a 3-ingredient Grand Marnier Old Fashioned. Got my glass chilled just a little bit. I generally like to stir. You could shake. That's a whole different tactic going about it. I mean, if that's what you want to do. But I am going to be using this Wilderness Trail rye. I like it. It's great. It's good. It's a really good price. Rye is going to, you're going to get more flavor. It's going to be a much stronger altogether old fashioned than say if I used, a 40 ABV bourbon. This thing's, what's this run at? 55 55%. This is 110 proof. This will not get lost in the drink. And I really am using this specifically for this Grand Marnier because there's a lot going on with this. And if you use something a little weaker, it maybe won't show up. Same thing with adding in a card to your deck. If you put a card in that doesn't necessarily make sense, even though you need it to do something and it doesn't have the right synergy, it may not be effective. So we're gonna add 1 part rye. And then we're gonna add 1 part of this Grand Marnier orange liqueur cognac. This is something I actually picked up for my wife. She kind of likes sweet liqueurs. She has a few things that she's tried over the years. She has a couple go-tos, but I wanted her to try something different one night, so I picked this up, and she liked it. The problem is she just doesn't really tend to drink too often, and so I wanted to find some simple uses for this. I will tell you, it does make a decent margarita. They really do pitch this in to making a really good Grand Marnier margarita. But I will tell you, I have about as many margarita recipes as I have old fashioned recipes. I kid you not. So we could do a video with 4 different old fashioned recipes, and I could tell you what the difference is. So like I said, I'm gonna use this one. This is something that you should generally be able to find for bitters. But I will say, when I tested this a couple nights ago for the second time, I used those smoked chili bitters and it was good. So we're going to do about 2 or 3 dashes of this. And we are going to stir. And we're going to talk about the other thing that's kind of missing. We're going to talk about a garnish. Well, I do have a few things I generally like to use for this. This would be a great situation to use an orange peel. I will tell you, generally when I'm around the house making a drink, I'm not gonna put a garnish on it. It's not really what I'm gonna do. It's a little bit extra effort, but I will say I have noticed over the years a little bit of that orange zest from that orange peel. It's insane how big of a difference it makes. It really is. So I'm gonna tell you right now, if you haven't tried it when you've made a cocktail, try it. It does. You will taste it and you will go, the aromatics, the flavor, it just tweaks it, and sometimes tweaks it for the better. The other thing you could do is we could be using a maraschino cherry. I do tend to have those on hand, but I also have 2 girls in the house, and maraschino cherries do not last very long in my refrigerator. I've bought some really nice cocktail cherries over the years, and they're gone. So I have these cherry candies, and I got this from I was reading some, I think it was Whiskey Advocate, a whole thing on making old fashions, and Whiskey Advocate, and really they just said, when it comes to that maraschino cherry, you just need a little sweetness, a little bit of a candy, maybe even a sour jack. Your preference. Like I said, you build this cocktail for you, and I'm building this cocktail for me. So we're gonna do that, and I'm gonna grab one of these hard cherries, and it's just, like I said, just gonna add just a little bit. And I'll tell you right now, I don't really have to worry about the girls getting into these, because I got these well hidden. We'll put these right here. We're gonna taste this guy. I'm gonna tell you right now, this is one of the best old fashions I've ever made. You got that sweetness from the orange. You got that spice that hit from the bitters. If you never had bitters before, it's a lot like adding cinnamon. Any kind of like nutmeg. It's very similar to that. Is very high proof alcohol, because they do obviously use that to extract the flavors. And then even at the end, I get a little bit of this cherry sweetness. And that rye is just pushing all those ingredients along. This is a synergy that works very fantastic for this drink. And this is what you should be striving for when you're trying to make a deck in a deck building game. You want something that everything plays nicely together. And your first one might not be that great. But then the next time, you might go, well, you know what? I don't quite like that much Grand Marnier. So let's half that. And maybe let's add, just a little bit more simple syrup. Your call, your drink, your preference. And that's what it's all about. You build your deck your way, you make your drink your way. And if you find a really good way to do either of them, leave me a comment, because I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn too. And I almost have to guarantee that one of you out there has an old-fashioned recipe that is worth me trying. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for me. I'm Kevin with E.D.G Game, and if you want to join the E.D.G Game family, you should subscribe and head over to our Discord and join the conversation over there. Hope every one of you has a fantastic day, and until next time, much love.